Hey guys, welcome to Denny's. Today, we're going to be going over what I believe to be a perfected version of Lepic. We've got 4 builds. More specifically, we're going to go into 2 builds for doing invasion dungeons or infiltration dungeons and mobbing or farming. And then we've got 2 builds for bossing, so solo bossing and group bossing. So definitely stay tuned. They are extremely fun, and I've pretty much min-maxed them down to the very last detail, bar a couple on some of them. But very excited for this one, guys, so let's hop right into it. Remember to like the video if it helped, and comment any feedback you have for me in the comment section below. It means a lot. Let's hop right in, though. Let's get into it. Okay, and as far as components, the external components we're going to be using for every single build in this video is going to be the Slayer set. However, there are some changes you can make. My Slayer set is relatively good. It's not absolutely god rolled, but it has all the stats that I want, except for maybe one, but I'm not too worried about defense on the memory. I have gold recovery instead of defense on the memory. And then toxin resistance and equipment drop rate. The processor really has no good rolls. Like, you can get shield for survivability, but at the end of the day, you're really just looking for the 4 set from the Slayer for every single build in the video. As far as the bossing builds, the reason we're using it is for the skill power, the main reason. And then as far as the mobbing builds, the main reason we're going to be using it is for the second part that says when defeating enemies inflicted with Toad, recovers MP and specialized resource. It's basically like a mini MP collector, as long as you are using your traction grenade often, which with the dungeon, invasion, and mobbing build, we will be doing that. And then obviously that skill power is giving us extra damage in those builds too. And then for the boss, we never really use the Toad part, so we're not really gaining any benefit from that other than the 26% skill power. But as follows, so you, by priority, I would say the most important thing to get on your Slayer set is the sensor with max MP and the aux power with MP recovery out of combat. You definitely want max HP on the aux power as well. This is mainly because obviously the Slayer set does not have a lot of max HP. It literally only comes on the processor, so we need every ounce of max HP that we can get for survivability. No matter what content we're doing, it's always very helpful to have max HP. Even if you're doing some easy Kuiper, mining on in the sterile lands, you can still die at wave 10 if you don't have enough HP, even with Lepic's cheat death. So definitely go for the max HP, and then we will jump over to the Reactor. We're going to start off with the 2 builds for invasion dungeons and for farming or mobbing or everything else. You can even run the build in invasion dungeons, the Dyson build that we'll go over. So the reactor that we're going to be using, I'm using the Secret Garden mounted burning mechanics reactor, so fire and tech obviously, and then I've got skill effect range and fire skill power boost. This is not my ideal one. My ideal one is cooldown reduction and critical hit damage for mobbing. Obviously, the reason we're using the Secret Garden mounting is because we will be using the Secret Garden for our mobbing and invasion builds. So let's jump into that really fast, since we are done with the reactor there. So for the Secret Garden, obviously I made a video on the Secret Garden if you want to take a look at that, but we're really just using it for its unique ability in some of these builds. Now, it isn't going to be up all the time. You can pre-stack it whenever you are at the last boss to get a nice 30% or so. I think it's like, what, 37%? What is that? 16, 32 plus 5%. So 37% skill power buff for the final boss if you can pre-stack it enough to spam your nades. But then you won't really have a lot of MP left to use on the boss with your ultimate ability. So I would recommend this gun is just a very solid gun, and if you get lucky enough to trigger pest control, it's really the only gun that works with Lepic spamming his grenades in these mobbing and dungeon builds. So that is why the Secret Garden is the weapon of choice. Obviously, pest control giving you the skill power buff, and then itself it's a very, very good weapon. It scales off of crit damage, it scales off of crit hit, and it is able to get a solid like 90% crit rate. With just those base mods. As you can see, I run it with a 90.25% crit rate, and that basically means it's just critting every single time. I do want to say before I forget, if you do have your increased efficiency out, your arm cannon, while you are trying to throw grenades, you will not stack the pest control buff that Secret Garden gives you. Only when you have just the Secret Garden out, you're equipping or you're currently holding the Secret Garden, just to be clear. And that is the weapon that we will be using for both the mobbing and the dungeon build for Lepic. And as far as the other components that you can run, if you don't want to, I definitely recommend Slayer. If you can get your hands on it, it's definitely the best in slot in my opinion for all these builds. However, for the mobbing and dungeon builds, you can run the 2 set of Annihilation and the 2 set of the Molten Fortress Volcanic Sensor. If you want more HP, sorry, Volcanic set. If you want more HP, the memory, the Annihilation memory, the Annihilation processor, and the Volcanic sensor, as well as the Volcanic auxiliary power, you're going to be getting 6.2% fire skill power, and then you're also going to be getting a little bit of duration for your traction grenade and for your ultimate ability. So it's not the worst in the world, and you're getting much more tankiness because of how much HP this set has. So as an alternative for a bit more of a tankier Lepic, you can do, again, 2-piece Annihilation and 2-piece Volcanic, with the aux power and sensor being Volcanic, and the memory and processor being the Annihilation, if you would like a little bit more tankiness. But like I said, I definitely prefer Slayer, as you are going to be utilizing all of the pieces of Slayer much more than you are going to be utilizing the tankiness, due to the fact that we have a cheat death in all these builds. Okay, and as far as the first of the 2 builds for the dungeon/mobbing setup, we are going to be talking about the one that I'll be using for the invasion dungeons primarily. This is going to be it, as you can see on screen. It is kind of like a mixture between a farming build and a lot of damage with your ult and a tank build. So we'll go over them one by one, and I'll kind of explain why I'm using each mod. So first and foremost, we're going to start with the crit mod, so emergency measures, skill insight, and skill concentration. The reason that I am using 3 instead of 4 here is because there's just so much more that I want to use for invasion dungeons to make them go smoothly. You don't really need that front lines as much, even though it does help. It does increase your damage pretty substantially. I don't think that you need it. I think that you can get extra HP or cooldown for this build to make it a little bit more enjoyable in the dungeons. However, you absolutely can remove Nimble Fingers if you would like to, and you can throw in a that front lines crit mod. But we're going to go with this. So the 3 crit mods, and the reason I use emergency measures over front lines is just because I want more crit hit rate than crit damage, so that my grenades can actually crit and my ultimate ability has a higher chance to crit. Because if you're not critting, you're not doing the crit damage that you get. Obviously, we have skill concentration for a big chunk of that crit damage. And then we've got Focus on Fire, Nimble Fingers. That's going to be our cooldown mixed with time distribution and more cooldown. And obviously Focus on Fire giving us our main brunt of fire skill power, obviously. And then the max HP we get from time distribution, 52%, mixed with the increased HP of just the increased HP mod. So a lot of HP to be had. It increases our tankiness and makes it so we don't really have to worry about it. And we do not use a Transcendent mod in here. If you guys wanted to, you absolutely could throw in Firearms Master if you're not worried about dying ever. It'll help your damage just a wee bit, obviously, but it's nothing crazy. I don't think it's anything that'll... Sometimes it might finish off the last boss of an invasion. It might be the difference, but honestly, I would rather have a cheat death just in case, because I don't want to restart the invasion dungeon if I die. So that's just my opinion. And then skill extension and skill expansion, no downside to both of these. No negative power modifier. We're just using increased duration for our ultimate ability and for the traction grenade, so it lasts a little bit longer. We can proc our Slayer 4-piece off that. And then the skill expansion, obviously, for the, again, the traction grenade and the ultimate projectile that we get does have a nice bit of range on it, so it hits, even if you miss substantially, it'll still hit. So a very, very good build. Tanky, you still have cheat death. You're pretty much never going to have to worry about dying, and you just one-shot the last boss. If you don't one-shot him with your ult, you pull out your Secret Garden or your heavy weapon of choice, whatever you're using, and you can kill the last boss in probably just a couple shots if you didn't already get pretty close with your ultimate on there. Okay, and next up, we are going to talk about the fun build. This is the Giga Fun, have fun, fun over meta, have a blast, just like do what you want. This is not crazy meta, but this is extremely, extremely fun. I call it the Dyson shucking build, mainly because the word sucking is actually against the terms of Nexon's chat policies, I guess, so we can't actually put sucking because that is kind of rude to say that something sucks, but I will move on from that, even though I'm a little upset still. Anyway, we're starting off with the bread and butter, increased efficiency, and then we're going to talk about a little bit more. We're not just using the increased efficiency. So the main point of this build is to basically spam. So you're going to spam all of your abilities, and you're going to do a lot of damage with all your abilities. And when I say spam, I mean really spam. You can see probably the background footage right now, but more or less, we are running MP conversion, nimble fingers, and then we're running the skill insight, skill concentration. So we've got our cooldown in the MP conversion, nimble fingers, got our crit hit chance and crit hit rate, and our concentration and insight. And then focus on fire and tech because we want all the cooldown we can get. Our ultimate ability is obviously permanent, but the reason that we're running cooldown is because we want to spam traction grenade while we're using increased efficiency. At the same time, cancel our animation of shooting a sun with your ultimate ability by throwing a grenade. So you can shoot an ultimate ability and then immediately throw a grenade to cancel any animation and restart for the second, or I guess the second shot of the ultimate ability, but the third shot in the rotation. So you just go shoot a bullet, throw a grenade, shoot a bullet, throw a grenade, shoot a bullet, throw a grenade. You never run out of MP because we have MP Collector and we have the Slayer set, and you're usually throwing your traction grenade to affect them with Toad. So you'll be affecting them with Toad, shooting your cannon, throwing your grenade. MP Collector will have a 17% chance to proc, and your Slayer set will have a 17% chance to proc. Some people might argue that you do not need MP Collector. I would agree. You might be able to put something else here. I don't think there's a whole lot of options. I think that this just makes it so you absolutely never have to worry about running out of MP. So that's why I choose it, and that's why I think it is the best. But you absolutely can make the argument that you may not need MP Collector if you're running around and picking up MP packs on the ground. But then we've got the increased HP, skill expansion, and maximize range. Obviously, skill expansion and maximize range. This thing is a nuke, increased efficiency. You want to have the biggest radius you can with the final explosion of it. Obviously, it does not leave a dot behind like the regular ultimate ability, but it does a giant AoE in that range. So you want to make sure to maximize that. That is why we're running those two. And then obviously increased HP. We do not have to worry about losing our cheat death here. We still have our cheat death, but I am still using increased HP because I don't want to proc my cheat death a lot. I think increased HP is, you could throw crit here if you're not worried about dying ever, but I just like to not ever have to worry about using my cheat death even, and then use it as a backup. But you can absolutely throw the other crit mod here if you wanted to get a little bit more damage out of the build, because you will with that crit mod. You will absolutely get a little bit more damage out of it. And then that is pretty much the build for the farming build or mobbing build. We'll just call it the fun build. This is probably the most fun I've had on Lepic, and I guarantee a lot of you guys are gonna have a lot of fun with this build. It's just extremely fun. It's not like you're going in and doing like the craziest content with it. You're not killing gluttony, but you can go in and clear stuff relatively quick, very quick, very fast actually. It's very respectable, and then you can obviously, use the bossing builds for bossing and stuff like that. If you don't feel like using Bunny, which I really don't really like doing a whole lot because I feel like I'll burn out on Bunny if I just keep using her for everything. So I've been using a lot of Lepic. But I digress. This is a very fun build. We'll go over the gameplay loop. As far as the gameplay loop for the Dyson build, the black hole grenade build, mainly what you're doing is you're basically just keeping your increased efficiency on, and then you are throwing your traction grenade and your grenade throw. Like I said, pretty much just spamming them. You want to make sure you always have overclock on, so you're always setting enemies on fire. And yeah, it's pretty simple. The one thing I will say, if you want to proc more of your Secret Garden pest control buff, do not use the increased efficiency and just use the grenade and the traction grenade and overclock, because that way you'll be proccing your pest control. You'll be getting a nice like 40% skill power buff, and then your grenades will do a ton of damage. And then maybe you could throw in whatever else you wanted into here. If you want to just work more towards Secret Garden, which sometimes you can just take off your increased efficiency, like just don't ult and just run around with grenades, just grenades instead, because you've got a 1.5 second cooldown on your grenades, so you don't always have to be running with the increased efficiency. But nonetheless, really easy gameplay loop, very fun gameplay loop. Okay, so as far as the two bossing builds we'll be using, we're using the same reactor. I've got an impact mounted. Any impact weapon will do, and we will explain why shortly. But in my case, Nazistra's Devotion. And then we've got additional skill attack when attacking Colossus and the skill duration up. So the skill duration up, I definitely want crit damage. I want to try that out. I think I mean, obviously it does more damage. As far as the skill duration up, you do get an extra shot. So it is nice to get that extra shot. However, I would prefer to actually have critical hit damage, even though skill duration up is very close in the long run to the critical hit damage. I think that in a real world scenario, keep in mind, guys, I haven't done any crazy maths or graphs or anything, but just in a real world scenario, obviously I've played with people that have crit damage. I've played with I've played with skill duration up, and at the end of the day, it's very, very tiny marginal difference. However, Crit damage will allow you to do more burst. So I would go for crit damage in the long run if you're going for burst. And then that is the reactor. Let's talk about why we're using that impact reactor real quick. So let's hop over to the weapon of choice for the bossing builds. So in my case, it's Nazistra's Devotion. However, it can be any impact weapon. The reason this is because of the mod Sharp Precision Shot. If you did not know, the Sharp Precision Shot mod is available on general rounds as well as special rounds. However, it takes 0.5 seconds to stack up to 10 stacks. So every 0.5 seconds, whereas this one stacks up once every 0.4 seconds. So it's a tenth of a second quicker. Seems like not a lot in the long run, but guys, it absolutely does gain you one shot if you are not running skill duration up. And in some cases, you can get 2 shots out of it if you're doing some crazy cheesy build where you're trying to get the most shots out of your Lepic arm cannon that you can. But it absolutely does give you 1 extra shot for the builds that I am going to be talking about today, which are, in my opinion, the best builds you can run for Lepic in 2 different scenarios, solo bossing and group bossing. So let's hop into the Descendant mods now that I went over that. Or real quick, sorry, before we do. The fire rate up. You want to make sure you have the fire rate up mod. You probably saw it on screen. Those are the only 2 mods you need on your impact weapon. Truly, that is all you need. If you wanted to juice out your impact weapon that you get to do a little bit more damage whenever your ult's down, go for it. Throw some other mods in there that benefit your weapon. If it's an Izistra's, obviously crit damage, crit chance, rifling, reinforcement, firearm ATK, all that good stuff. Maybe some weak point, but right now I'm just worried about how to do the most damage with our ultimate ability. So let's take a look now, since we've got the weapon out of the way, at the Descendant mod. So we're going to start off with what I call the solo burst build. Okay, so these mods are how you get the absolute most amount of damage that you can in the game. Skill power plus 87.6% and skill power modifier plus 96.1%. Obviously, we're more worried about the skill power. The modifier is a nice little chunk of damage, and we'll explain why. But obviously, the downside, plus 50% cooldown on both of these, which means we have ourselves a plus 100% cooldown. Not something you want to run in a group, guys. I want to emphasize this. This is for solo bossing only, to absolutely nuke bosses the fastest that you possibly can with Lepic. So that is why we use those. Now, the skill power modifier obviously only affects the dot. Well, it does affect his ultimate shot, but it really doesn't affect it that much, as we know, because of how much it already hits for with the 2,800% skill power that it uses. But nonetheless, with the burn and the damage over time of your overclock and your overkill, that skill power modifier is going to add a giant amount of dot damage over time, to the fight that you're doing. It's going to be very noticeable. So maximize power, maximize skill. Dangerous ambush doesn't really need an explanation. I will explain it for people that have not seen it before. Whenever the boss is stunned, you're basically doing 75%. You get a 75% skill power boost, which is absurd. You're doubling your skill power almost. So that is why we use Dangerous Ambush whenever they are stunned, which we can stun them very easily. We will do insane amounts of damage. And then MP Accelerant and Skill Extension, mainly to fit all the other mods in here without any issue, and give us a very long time on our ultimate ability. Obviously, it's about 13.3 seconds. This is why it's so important to have max MP recovery, because we want to maximize the uptime of our ultimate ability on Lepic for bossing. Now, that is the solo burst. The gameplay is very simple. Roll up to a boss, press your second ability before you do anything, before they spawn. It lasts a very long time, 33.2 seconds. Press your, whenever you're ready to start damaging, press your ultimate ability, and it is very important to roll the millisecond that you have pressed your ultimate ability. You will actually gain a shot if you do this properly. If you wait to roll and cancel the animation on your ultimate ability, you will lose a shot. Believe it or not, you actually will lose a shot. You can lose a shot in some cases. In this build's case, you absolutely can. So right as you press your ultimate ability, you need to roll. You have to roll, and that will give you the most amount of shots, and then just lay into the boss. You can shoot at his feet if you're worried about missing. It's very easy to get kills by just shooting at the boss's feet. Only one that you really can't do that for is Swamp Walker, and sometimes Pyromaniac. So if you're doing like Devourer or Executioner or Dead Bride, you can shoot at their feet. That way you don't ever miss. And then for for Pyro and Swamp Walker, you basically shoot them in the face with your arm cannon and hopefully stagger them properly and don't get too crazy RNG to make them go immune immediately. Sometimes that happens if you get like a couple crits. If you get like one crit and then not a crit, it might make them go into their frenzy. But we go again if that happens. Anyway, very easy gameplay loop. And then let's move on to the group bossing. So the group bossing is centered around more survivability and trying to do the same, if not a little bit less damage than we do with our burst over a longer period of time, which it does succeed in doing, because what we do is we swap into Enlightenment instead of adding the extra skill power modifier, and we swap to maximize duration from MP Accelerant. So that gives us 20% more skill duration. We do lose quite a bit of skill power modifier. However, you are shooting about 2 to 3 more shots with this build. Therefore, you've got longer ticks on your burn because of maximized duration, and you've got longer ticks on the overkill dot due to maximized duration. So in the long run, you will be doing around the same damage, if not a little tiny bit less with this build. We obviously are running all 4 crit mods, Fire Specialist, because we do not want any extra cooldown on this build. We want to be able to use our abilities. You'll see the gameplay footage in the background. It's actually pretty good. I wasn't, obviously it's not meta for Gluttony, but I was able to do right around 41 million damage to Gluttony. That was the most I was able to put out with this build. I got 2 ultimates off. Obviously, he's very critical resistant to skills. So I got 2 ultimates off, and I was just using my Secret Garden. And whenever I would use my ultimate, I would use obviously, make sure that my Nazistra's Devotion was equipped in hand. And then that's pretty much it. The gameplay loop is the same. The only difference is you get your cheat death back. You don't have to worry about losing your cheat death with Firearms Master. And yeah, you survive because we have increased HP. That's that. Simply put, the same build, just more HP. You can run this with groups and you can do a lot of damage. Again, guys, this is if you've got Lepic. Obviously you can do more damage with a fully built Glay on Gluttony or a fully built Haley with a gun build. You can, but if you've got Lepic and you enjoy Lepic, you can get it done with Lepic. And he's fun. So definitely an option. And that has pretty much been the video, guys. A huge shout out to the guys who helped me out over on the Twitch stream. Diz, No One Has to Know, Nathan, Ascendancy. We spent quite a long time, at least I spent a long time in the mod screen on stream messing with Lepic for the past couple days and weeks even. Really excited to put this out because this is my favorite Descendant. Come stop by the stream if you guys haven't already. The link is in the description. And again, a huge shout out to those guys and anybody else that helped in the process. And then, yeah, guys, if you haven't seen my community Discord, link is in the description. And if you would like to support me on Patreon, you're probably seeing the backer screen now. You can take a look in the description for that as well. I hope you guys all have a wonderful rest of your day and have a good week. Enjoy the first Descendant. I know that Tuesday is coming up quick. The new week is looking a little bit better as far as farms. So I will see you guys then. And yeah, man, I'm out of here. Peace out. Goodbye.